Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Time for another show. Time for another Tuesday. Time for another reminder that a government shutdown is coming. And how do we know a government shutdown is coming? Because yesterday it was reported that they had reached a deal to avoid a government shutdown. And one of the parties to that deal is, the Republican Party. And as you know, that probably means the opposite, so I guess we'll find out. And of course, today being a Tuesday, we'll have a shot at speaking with Joan McCarter. I think everything is on track. Who knows? It's been a weird couple of weeks, but the holiday season is over. On the other hand, I don't know what the assignments are like over there at Daily Kos, but today at 9:30 is, that's the time called for the beginning of oral arguments. And really, aren't they the best kind of arguments? Oral arguments on the, before the D.C. Circuit, in which Trump is, I guess, appealing his loss below in Judge Tanya Chutkan's courtroom for his argument that absolute presidential immunity, always and forever, before, after, and during, should be the basis for dismissing all the cases against him. This is the Jack Smith case, including, I guess, everything. I mean, if he's got absolute presidential immunity, he'll want the insurrection charges, which aren't yet insurrection charges, but conspiracy surrounding what became the insurrection charges. And then, of course, I guess he's also under indictment from Jack Smith for the theft of the government papers, including the classified information from the White House. But I mean, hey, if your immunity is absolute, then what the hell? Let's dismiss everything. So lots going on, lots to catch up on. It might be that because that hearing begins at 9:30, I don't know who they've assigned to cover that, if anyone. It's airing live. People will have, I don't think there's any cameras in there because it's a federal courtroom, but I guess, I don't know. Who was just saying, I think Charlie Savage was just saying that on behalf of the New York Times that their coverage would start at 9:30, and C-SPAN has some coverage too, so maybe there is something going on with the video element. They have a live audio feed and coverage at the New York Times. Okay, I can see that. Charlie Savage sending that out, and let's see, just picked up a note. Yeah, Justice says audio from, is it from New York Times that we're talking about? I don't know what C-SPAN is doing, but, I mean, it would be pretty boring to just sit there. They could be just doing audio, and then, I don't know, who knows what they'll use for their video element. But, I mean, I don't think that there's cameras in the courtroom. It's a federal courtroom, so that's that. I didn't check up on that. Now, I was just bringing that up, really, one, to make you say, oh, that's what I should be doing at 9:30. Don't go. It's going to be boring. And two, I guess it's possible that Joan may be tied up in covering that at some level. So who knows? We'll see what sort of signals we get. But there's plenty of content to go around. That's there's no doubt about that. Wow. All right. Where to start this morning? I guess we'll stick with that subject. Should I open up Charlie Savage's Blue Sky? What do they call it again? Skeet about that. Interesting. It's illustrated with a photo of Nixon and the now deceased Henry Kissinger on what I guess is Air Force One, but what this is some decorating scheme on Air Force One that they had back in the day. All right. Well, it's the 70s. And is Nixon doing, Nixon's doing the tucking the tie into his waistband thing. It's really quite incredible. Anyway, wow, the 70s were wild. So let's see. Other things I wanted to share with you. There's a lot going on. As I guess since we started on the courtroom stuff, we should cover some of those stories, and we will. But the legal aspects of these stories. But I guess let's start with the illegal aspects of those stories. There's been some strange activity in the last couple of days. I wonder why anyone would think Donald Trump was an insurrectionist. Well, as it turns out, I guess the first one to hit the news, or at least hit Pocket, the order in which I've tucked those around. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think. Well, maybe just for some context, I will add that Joe Biden made a second speech decrying, the dangers to democracy that Donald Trump poses. And by all accounts, by most accounts, by one account, anyway, it was well received. And that account, did I even put it aside? I think so. Oh, actually, this was Brian Beutler referring to his first recent January 6th speech and saying that was a triumph. And his analysis of it being that it was a direct attack, and that he named names in this one, and he didn't use the current, the fashionable dodge among responsible, actually, usually politicians, although I think the opposite approach was called for here, just as Brian says, is to not name names and to point, or, sometimes not even, Obama used to almost never say it was Republicans who were behind doing certain things. It was just Congress, and it drove everybody crazy. And Brian Beutler points out here, Biden's January 6th speech was the template for a winning campaign. And it's a kind of a brief overview of the speech, and then we can get to the second one, and then we can get to what's going on in the context of all this, and why is Joe Biden so right. Anti-Trumpism unites Democrats and gets Biden fired up, and happens to be the cause of our lifetimes. What do you think? That's the way Brian's subheader puts it. And here's how he discusses what I think is the first speech. That was last Friday's speech, marking the third anniversary of the January 6th insurrection, landed in a way that his previous remembrances did not. I think it's important to be clear about that, since it's been accompanied by all the lame second-guessing and frustrating media misfires that are hardwired into our political system. But thankfully we have Brian to undo that. Much of the speech's success, what makes it stand out from Biden's earlier comments, is that he's shaken off the dated political tick of speaking obliquely or in code or by implication about his opponent. On Friday, instead of naming Donald Trump 0 times, he referred to him 44 times by name. That's pretty interesting. By the way, just by way of promotion for him, we are reading from Brian Beutler's offmessage.net, off-message blog, which is his way of, keeping in touch with us in the written format without utilizing the now Nazi infested, Substack system. A subscription newsletter to which I encourage you all to take a look. And hey, why not subscribe to all the friends of progressivism and good reporting everywhere, including this show, and Brian and 10,000 other people who are doing good work all the time. Okay, here's a sample of that good work. It might make you want to go over there and sign up. As I said, he said, on Friday, instead of naming Donald Trump 0 times, he referred to him 44 times by name. And I guess this is now text from the speech. And still, Trump did nothing. I guess we're talking about his activities on the 6th. It was among the worst derelictions of duty by a president in American history. An attempt to overturn a free and fair election by force and violence. A record 81 million people voted for my candidacy. That's Joe speaking, not me. And to end his presidency. That's a damn good point. Trump lost the popular vote by 7 million. And another great juxtaposition there. Trump lost. Drives Trump crazy to be labeled a loser. So you might as well do it as often as possible. Trump's claims about the 2020 election never could stand up in court. Trump lost, bing, bing, bing. Trump lost 60 court cases. 60. Trump lost, ding, 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 the Republican-controlled states. Trump lost, ding, 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 before a Trump-appointed judge, and then judges. And Trump lost, ding, ding, ding. I actually need to get one of those bells now that I think about it. Trump lost before the United States Supreme Court. And then there's interrupted by applause for that, because it was good. All of it. He lost. Trump lost, ding, 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 recount after recount after recount in state after state. But in desperation and weakness, another thing that'll drive him crazy, Trump and his MAGA followers went after elections officials who ensured your power as a citizen would be heard. These public servants had their lives forever upended by attacks and death threats for simply doing their jobs. In Atlanta, Georgia, he actually reminds us what state it's in. Yes, in Atlanta, Georgia, a brave black mother and her daughter, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, were doing their jobs as elected workers until Donald Trump and his MAGA followers targeted and threatened them, forcing them from their homes and unleashing racist vitriol on them. Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was just hit with a $148 million judgment for cruelty and defamation that he inflicted against them. I love the inclusion of the cruelty terminology. I mean, that's not a legal charge that he faced, cruelty, but that's a good addition. It's a very good addition. Brian continues on by saying, this kind of literalism isn't just cathartic, it's how the process of forgetting and desensitization can be arrested and reversed. True, and good point. The remarks don't just live on the page and in the moment they're spoken. They have the potential to be recirculated endlessly on television and social media. And now these clips will communicate Biden's meaning explicitly without requiring any sort of decoding. That's true. And then embedded in here is a, I don't know what, text, a tweet or Facebook, I don't know, can't tell which social media they're on anymore, from Biden HQ, calling out one of these clips. President Biden, Trump calls those who oppose him vermin. He talks about the blood of America being poisoned, echoing the same exact language used in Nazi Germany. There's no confusion about who Trump is and what he intends to do. And then here's the clip. And as they circulate, Brian continues, they may also serve as an antidote to the huge glut of viral video content on social media that's selectively edited to make Biden seem doddering or confused. Good point also. Making things like January 6th, Trump's totalitarian ambitions, his crimes and corruption, his general untrustworthiness, the central themes of the campaign, has these ancillary benefits because they are visceral. They unite Democrats and enliven Biden himself. Policy and economics aren't similarly unifying or morally black and white, and stripped of the emotional valence of insurrection and dictatorship, they evoke a softer register. They make Biden seem quiet and tired. Once more, into the speech, he titles the last section that we have available for us to read here. I want Democrats to consider the speech in this light because they have a fatalist tendency to throw a single haymaker, find it did not level their opponent for all time, and thus retreat to safe ground. In this period of after-action assessment, influential party figures will cite the worst news coverage or bad advice from inside the Beltway bubble as evidence that principled anti-Trump politics are a bust. That shouldn't be the only view Biden hears. A good point. And some of the reasons why a point like that should become necessary. Well, let's see. First of all, we'll get to that in just a second. I guess I'll also note for the record that there is a second such speech. I grabbed this because it was the only thing immediately available from The Hill. Brett Samuels writing just yesterday, Biden goes after Trump in second straight speech for pushing, quote, second lost cause. This, too, I thought was a good turn of phrase. President Biden on Monday night sought to connect the fallout of the Civil War with the aftermath of the 2020 election, as he warned truth and basic freedoms would be at risk if former President Trump won another term in the White House, or just took one for whatever reason, whether he won it or not. Biden drew comparisons between 2020 and the Civil War when he said defeated Confederates could not accept defeat and instead embraced the, quote, lost cause, that the war was about states' rights, not slavery. That lie, he argued, brought on Jim Crow laws that disenfranchised and discriminated against black people. Now, this is a quote, we're living in an era of a second lost cause, Biden said. Once again, there are some in this country trying to turn a loss into a lie. I like that turn of phrase too. Not a loss into a win, can't credit them with a win, and not a loss into a tie, which I think is what that sound evokes, but a better, and it's not a tie, it's a loss, but I like that, turning a loss into a lie. A lie, and it's great to make the newspapers print the word lie. A lie which, if allowed to live, will once again bring terrible damage to this country. This time, the lie is about the 2020 election. His comments came days after GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley, in late December, said the cause of the Civil War was about the role of government. Former President Trump, the frontrunner in the GOP primary, suggested in recent days that the Civil War could have been negotiated. We should have rammed the ramparts and taken over the airports, and could have been negotiated. Let me be clear for those who don't seem to know, slavery was the cause of the Civil War. There's no negotiation about that, Biden said Monday. The president spoke at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, where a white supremacist gunman a few years back killed 9 people, all of whom were black. Following the shooting, South Carolina lawmakers voted to remove the Confederate flag from state capitol grounds. Everyone remembers that. Biden warned, the truth is under assault in America. As a consequence, so is our freedom, our democracy, our very country, because without the truth, there is no light. Without light, there is no path from this darkness, Biden said. It marked the second campaign speech in recent days Biden has given, in which he tried to crystallize the stakes of the 2024 election, framing it as a fight for democracy and basic rights rather than as a matter of policy. His speech was briefly interrupted, that's a good note, by protesters calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, where thousands of Palestinians have died in Israeli military operations carried out in response to Hamas's October 7th terrorist attacks. The president rattled off a list of accomplishments during his administration, including legislation to lower prescription drug prices, an executive order to increase accountability in policing, and his efforts to curb gun violence. He took direct aim at Trump, calling him a loser, there it is again, ding, 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 and condemning Trump's recent comments that the community had to, quote, move on after a school shooting in Iowa. We didn't even get to that one. I mean, it's just one drop in a flood of Trump outrages. But yes, that happened, and you probably saw it already. He warned that MAGA Republicans led by Trump are trying to steal history by rewriting the events of January 6th as a peaceful protest. The lies that led to January 6th are part of a broader attack on the truth of America today that we have all seen before, Biden said. The same movement that stormed the Capitol on January 6th isn't just trying to rewrite history. They're trying to determine to erase history and your future, Biden continued. Banning books, denying your right to vote and have it counted, destroying diversity, equality, and inclusion across all across America. There's the DEI terminology, as they would put it. But yeah, let's just say what it actually stands for, because most people are for those things. South Carolina, which helped propel Biden to the Democratic nomination in 2020, will host the Democratic Party's first official primary next month after a scheduling change reshuffled the primary calendar. Biden is facing long-shot primary challenges from Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota and, of course, back again for another shot at it, Marianne Williamson. Okay, well, Biden is expected to breeze through the primary. Polling has shown he faces a tougher test in the general election. We've heard all those numbers. A slew of recent polls has him trailing Trump in key swing states. A New York Times Siena College poll released in December found Biden trailing Trump among registered voters, but leading the former president among those likely to vote in 2024. Crooked Joe Biden is a disaster. Here comes the, comment from, I guess they had to call the Trump campaign and get a comment because this was a story about Biden speaking about them. So let's see. Crooked Joe Biden, disaster, yada, yada, poll numbers, yada, blah, blah. Do I even want to, I mean, is it worth, you'd think it would be worth, giving our at least lip service to both sides in this, but I mean, I just don't think so anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not a real side. It's not a real political party or political operation. So, and I've never, to me, I'm not bound by the journalist neutrality rules anyway. So, well, okay. He made a cranky statement about Joe Biden, or rather, Trump advisor Jason Miller, the roofie rapist, I guess is the guy they decided to put on record for this one. I mean, that probably says as much about the campaign as what it is he actually had to say. You're not supposed to be the news, Jason. Monday's speech was a follow-up to the one that Biden delivered on Friday near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, focused squarely on January 6th and the attack on the Capitol. And in that speech, of course, Biden repeatedly and directly lambasted. And I did once, very recently, make a check on the pronunciation of that and found, and I think we've done this before, that if you were going to say lambasted, it was like lambasted. But if you were going to say basted, it was lambasted. Like the emphasis is on the other syllable for whatever reason. Anyway, I hate that word for that reason. But Biden repeatedly and directly lambasted, maybe. Trump, I think I've reversed it there. I'm going to go with the lambasted, but still emphasize that instead of lambasted. But anyway, a threat to democracy, of course, whose refusal to accept defeat in the 2020 election led to the violence of that day. Those remarks appeared to have the desired effect in motivating Biden's core supporters, with the campaign hauling in more than $1 million through online fundraising alone in the 24 hours that followed the speech. I guess that's nice, too. All right. So that's the atmosphere in which, well, that's the background. Now, or maybe that's the main story. And I guess you could say, all right, well, why is Biden, you might wonder, totally justified in putting things in such stark terms? Well, I think the answer is yes. But in case you've just been born, let's say, or, just, I don't know how you would have just found this podcast, but I need to do some work figuring out how people are finding the podcast, if they are, and find more people to find the podcast. You all could do that work for me. How about that? Just go out and get us some new listeners. Thanks. I'm not sure how, but go do it and then report your results. Well, we're nearing the break, but we can get all of the basics out there. What's going on currently that justifies this sort of language from Biden? It's not just what happened on January 6, 2021. It's still ongoing. Here's some of the news that you can use to illustrate that point. This from NBC News. Tanya Chutkan, you know her, the judge overseeing Trump's federal election interference case, and whose decision is being appealed at the D.C. Circuit today at 9:30. The decision to say, no, there's actually no such thing as absolute presidential immunity always and forever. Well, they're very angry with her. And as it happens, Judge Chutkan appears to be the victim of a swatting. Police and fire trucks responded to reports of a shooting at Chutkan's home, but police determined no shooting had taken place. You know what the swatting is. It's a fake report of some sort of violent incident that's meant to result in police kicking down the door with guns drawn. And, sometimes that results in accidentally / intentionally shooting somebody and maybe everybody in the house. And you probably shouldn't forget that Judge Chutkan is a person of color, and sometimes that doesn't mix that well with the swatting that's going on. So before the break threatens us, I will also put on record, but I'll go back and I'll read these articles just so we have all the details. NBC News likewise reports, let me get to the NBC report about that. There's been another swatting related to this case. As I mentioned today, Judge Chutkan's decision on denying Trump's plea for absolute presidential immunity is on appeal. And of course, the whole case being handled by Jack Smith, the special counsel prosecuting the case. Guess who also got swatted recently? Yes, that's right. NBC News also reports that special counsel Jack Smith was targeted by an attempted swatting on Christmas Day, because people had nothing better to do, presumably. Police were dispatched toward Smith's residence, but guess what? It didn't work very well because they were called off when they learned it was a false alarm. That's the way you would hope it would normally happen, but normally it doesn't happen that way because people don't have what Jack Smith has, and I guess what Judge Chutkan has as well. They were intercepted essentially by the U.S. Marshals who are guarding Smith's home because he's the target of so many threats, because Trump people are violent insurrectionists and deserve not only to be suppressed, but their candidate cannot stand on the ballot in the United States of America under the Constitution of the United States. If you don't mind my saying so. So there you go. And that's not all. Something I'll save for after the break that will be equally shocking, but we'll head into the break by going back to the article about what happened to Judge Chutkan and see what we can fit in here. Rebecca Shabbat, Daniel Barnes, and Michael Kosnar reported this on January 8th. Police and fire trucks, as you know, showed up Sunday night at the house of Tanya Chutkan, the federal judge overseeing former President Donald Trump's election interference case, after she appeared to be the target of an attempted swatting attack. So I guess I got the news in reverse order, but as it turns out, the swattings happened with Smith first and Chutkan second. Smith over the Christmas break, the Christmas weekend, and Chutkan just this past weekend. All right, police confirmed to NBC News that they responded to false reports of a shooting at a house that a witness identified as Chutkan's home. What do you know? A law enforcement official also confirmed that it was Chutkan's home and that she was at home when the police arrived at her residence. A police report obtained by NBC News said that officers with the Metropolitan Police Department responded to a call just after 10 p.m. Eastern Time that referenced the shooting a shooting that occurred at the location. But of course, no shooting had occurred. Once authorities arrived at the scene, an unnamed subject said she was not injured and that there was no one in her home. Police determined no shooting took place, a police spokesperson told NBC News. It's unclear where or from whom the call came.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on and get the details. It is now 9:30, the scheduled time for the beginning of the hearing before the D.C. Circuit, which I guess they should take note of who's serving on the panel in this for the D.C. Circuit. And if they don't already have it, I assume they will get around to, I hope, but if you're not doing it, take notes. Boost the security around the homes of the 3 judges on the panel, because pretty soon MAGA chuds will be swatting those guys too, because there's almost no chance they're going to recognize Trump's claims. So he'll lose the 150 millionth case in court, and the MAGA chuds will be on the loose and attempting to intimidate/kill the judges who stood for the rule of law. And, you know, maybe we ought to be doing something about it. Just wondering if you thought the same. So, as we said, the police report was, no shooting had taken place. It was unclear where or from whom the call to emergency services originated. And I'm surprised that they're not able to track that stuff down more quickly and thoroughly these days. I mean, given all the various things that get surveilled, I find it hard to believe that they can't really figure this out. But I don't know. I don't follow up a whole lot of swatting cases to their conclusions and find out whether people are in fact identified and charged. But I assume they do get around to it, but once again, a little too slowly, and certainly never in direct proximity to the call. I think that would be helpful in discouraging it if people were arrested and dispatched to prison very quickly and people saw that, but who knows. Anyway, Chutkan is, of course, the federal judge overseeing the federal election interference case brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith against Trump. She appears to be the victim of swatting, which happens when someone makes a false report of a crime in progress to draw police to a certain location. A spokesperson for the U.S. District Court did not respond to a request for comment on Monday. This comes after a recent uptick in threats against judges nationwide, including those serving on Colorado's Supreme Court, after they ruled that Trump is ineligible to appear on that state's primary ballot this year, a decision the Supreme Court has decided to take up. The FBI said it was investigating the threats and working to address them. Chutkan herself has also faced threats. A Texas woman, Abigail Jo Schrei, 43, was arrested and charged last August with transmitting a threat to injure a person via interstate commerce. The affidavit alleged that the woman called Chutkan on August 5th and left a threatening voicemail message for her. And would you like to know what she said? I mean, I don't know if this serves anybody's purpose, but okay. I mean, it's a detail and it's included here in the NBC report, though they dash out some of the, I don't know. It's not the worst language, but okay. Hey, you stupid slave, Schrei said before she referred to Chutkan using the N-word, the affidavit alleged. You are in our sights. Wink. We want to kill you. I guess that's not a wink. If Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we are coming to kill you. So tread lightly, and they dash out, I guess, the word bitch, which, I don't know. I think you can get away with that one on the air, but that's what we've got. And I mean, you're not going to get much insight into the intellectual firepower of MAGA America. Well, maybe you will, but yeah. But what a formulation of it. I mean, just to comment on for a second, if Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we'll kill you. Like, what does she have to do with it? That's, let the voters decide. So they did, and then, we should probably kill somebody. Okay. Sure. What a great thing to allow on the ballot in our country. Anyway, you will be targeted personally, publicly, your family, all of it, Schrei is alleged to have said. And, I don't know. I'd say we throw her in a wood chipper in the public square at this point, but, we don't do that in this country. Trump has also explicitly targeted Chutkan on social media, posting disparaging messages about her on his Truth Social account, as well as about prosecutors working in Smith's office and potential witnesses in the case. Chutkan imposed a gag order against Trump. What do you know? What a good idea that turned out to be. But it didn't help very much. Prohibiting him from targeting Smith, other prosecutors and potential witnesses. But Trump was able to get winking messages out on Truth Social and elsewhere so that other people would carry out the threats against Chutkan and Smith, and so they have done. Chutkan imposed a gag order against Trump prohibiting from targeting Smith, other prosecutors, and potential witnesses. A federal appeals court in D.C., the one that's working today, I guess, but maybe a different panel, narrowed it in early December, allowing him to target any high-profile witness who makes disparaging comments about him, as well as Smith himself. Trump's trial in the case is set to begin in March, but it could be delayed depending on how the Supreme Court will rule on Trump's presidential immunity claim. Again, the same claim being argued before the D.C. Circuit Court today. Trump pleaded not guilty to the charges at a court appearance in early August. In recent years, judges have faced a myriad of threats. In 2022, Biden signed into law the annual Defense Authorization Bill, which contained the Daniel Anderl Judicial Security and Privacy Act, named after the son of U.S. District Judge Esther Salas. He was killed in 2020 when a man posing as a delivery driver fatally shot Daniel at the door of their New Jersey home. The law bans the selling, trading, transferring, or purchasing of judges' personal information online. It allows federal judges to request that their information be removed from the internet if it's publicly available, and authorizes the U.S. Marshals Service to hire additional analysts, security specialists, and other personnel to help prevent threats to federal judges. But, there's a candidate for president who is pro-threatening federal judges. So, whatever. You're just going to have to say, golly gee, First Amendment, something, something, even though the rest of the Constitution doesn't apply anymore. Okay. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was targeted in June 2022 when an armed man was arrested near Kavanaugh's home after he called 911 on himself. That's an interesting version of swatting. The man was found to have a handgun, a knife, pepper spray, and burglary tools. Bad for Kavanaugh, right? The suspect was alleged to have told investigators that he targeted Kavanaugh because he was angry about the possibility that the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade, and they did, and about the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. He said he thought Kavanaugh would loosen gun laws. About a week later, Congress passed a bill to provide security to family members of Supreme Court justices, which Biden signed into law because he cares about judges not getting killed, even jackass judges like Brett Kavanaugh. Now, here's the story on what happened with Jack Smith's house. Special counsel Jack Smith targeted by attempted swatting on Christmas Day. I feel like singing it now. On Christmas Day. We swatted Jack Smith's house on Christmas Day. I don't know if it was in the morning, but he's arguing this morning. Police were dispatched toward Smith's residence, but were called off. And that's the way you would hope it would work, right? We're racing to this location. Well, like from the movie The Fugitive, we've already got a unit there. Well, the U.S. Marshals do. You could see how they might end up being like, well, I don't know. They're not on our radio frequency, but I'm glad this one worked out. You'd think it would from time to time. Anyway, Michael Kosnar and Zoe Richards reported this one for NBC News. Special counsel Jack Smith, who is overseeing the prosecution of former President Donald Trump in 2 federal cases, was the target of an attempted swatting at his Maryland residence on Christmas Day. According to 2 law enforcement sources, someone called 911 and said that Smith had shot his wife at the address where Smith lives. Montgomery County Police dispatched units toward the home, but were called off when the deputy U.S. Marshals protecting Smith and his family told police that it was a false alarm, that everyone inside the home was safe. No arrests have been made in connection with the incident yet, but hopefully we'll hear some news about that. A spokesperson for the special counsel's office declined to comment. Police and U.S. Marshal Service aren't commenting either. Smith has faced a series of threats in the months since he brought an indictment against Trump related to the former president's alleged efforts to overturn his election loss in 2020. Smith's attorney, Cecil Vandevender, previously told appeals court judges from the D.C. Circuit that Smith's office has been subject to multiple threats and intimidating communications after Trump published inflammatory posts about Smith. Smith is also overseeing Trump's prosecution related to the alleged mishandling of classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago home. Trump has pleaded not guilty in both cases. A Justice Department official told NBC News that more than $4.4 million was spent between April and September of last year on security provided by the U.S. Marshals Service for Smith and his team. Trump was indicted in June in the classified documents probe and indicted 2 months later in the election interference case. And I hope will be indicted again with a direct charge of insurrection at some point, but no real indication that that's going to happen. NBC News reported earlier Monday that Tanya Chutkan, the federal judge overseeing the case, the election interference case anyway, appeared to be the victim of a similar swatting incident over the weekend. Gee whiz. Maybe they can figure this out and get 2 birds with 1 stone. Speaking of stone, we'll get to that next. Swatting involves, of course, well, you know what it is. I don't need to explain it to you again. The election interference trial scheduled to begin March 4th. While the classified documents case, this is a good point, I haven't checked in on this one in a while, scheduled to go to trial on May 20th. And maybe I should start a spreadsheet of these cases so that we can have an easy reference guide somewhere up on the wall or something. I've been thinking of making use of the still available services of College Boy #1, College Graduate #1, as a production assistant on this. He's done a couple of bits here and there and some research jobs on occasion, but I was thinking about getting one of those, like those hotel desk service bells, so I can ding, 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 ring it and have him come in and like pass some notes and have him do on-air research while I need something Googled quick while I'm in the middle of talking about something. But, we'll see whether he's up for that task. But, it's been interesting having him around for this and being able to put his time to use for the show, about which he could not care less, by the way. He's really just not political. So it's a bit of a torture for him to have to do it, but keeps him busy and helps out around here every once in a while, too. So, okay, let's see. Oral arguments on the presidential immunity is noted in here. That, of course, going on right now, presumably. I'm not checking the feed, but that's ding, ding, ding. I could have him come in here and check and see if they got started on that and then let me know. And then he would say, yeah, they did. And I'd say, yeah, they did. I don't know how much that's really worth, but I don't know. We could be a little bit more professional if we had, if we made more and better use of it. So I just thought of what would be a great research project for him. But I don't know when I'll need it. But I was just thinking, given that he's an economics major, this would probably go right up his alley. I was thinking, I guess next time that there are at least Democratic House leadership races, my quick and dirty analysis of who's given out the most money from their leadership pack with progressively more incisive layers of, I guess I call it incisive. I don't know what it really is, but more intensive looks at the money and who it was given to and how many of the people who received it are still in Congress and able to vote, et cetera, to determine a prediction for the outcome of a race like that. That would be right up his alley, collecting all that data, putting it in a chart, and making it available and sortable in a database. We should get him on that one. Okay, well, let's see. Back to the news about MAGA chuds making everything in America worse at every possible turn. I said there was more than just swatting Judge Chutkan, swatting Jack Smith. I mean, I guess it couldn't be any more obvious. And by the way, I don't know whether there's going to be any discussion about this. There's probably no call for discussion about this at the D.C. Circuit today, but at some point it might be worth reminding the D.C. Circuit, or maybe even in proceedings today, just by way of courtesy to them. Like, you guys are upping your security, right? I just want to point this out. Like, Jack Smith could be in there and say, you're hearing an appeal from Judge Chutkan's courtroom that I argued below. But I just want you to know, Trump lost that argument on immunity, and more or less immediately after losing that argument, and by the way, after partially prevailing thanks to you guys on the question of gag orders, you loosened his gag order, then he lost on immunity below. Now we're here appealing it. That's not a problem. What is an issue is in between his losing on immunity and our gathering here today, Trump supporters swatted my house, swatted Judge Chutkan's house. Now you're being asked to decide the same question that got Judge Chutkan's house swatted and my house swatted. And I wonder how you're going to decide. And if it bothers you or worries you that you can't do justice impartially because you have to worry about being swatted or otherwise threatened, maybe you ought to think a little bit more about whether or not you should have loosened that gag order. And by the way, pretty soon you may also have the opportunity, although I don't know, I guess it won't really come to the D.C. circuit unless D.C. or nearby environs, I guess it'll have to be D.C., bans him from the ballot as an insurrectionist. Then they would get it. But in the meantime, your fellows on the federal bench and the appeals bench and the Supreme Court elsewhere in the country will be deciding whether or not he's really an insurrectionist. And that decision should maybe be colored by whether he is inspiring violent threats and attacks against the judges deciding the question. Maybe that might weigh on your mind. Anyway, I don't know. So there's more craziness. Let's get right to this one. and let's see if I can track down original sourcing on this one. I don't know, maybe not, because it's billed as an exclusive. That's surprising to me. And it's at Mediaite, which gets exclusives from time to time, but it seems like I'd be surprised if the story was actually generated here, but I guess that's the claim. Diana Falzone says it's an exclusive, or at least her editors said, let's put it under the banner headline of exclusive. What's the story? Roger Stone spoke with Cop Pal about assassinating Eric Swalwell and Jerry Nadler. Have you seen this one? It's been out for a day or two, but we didn't get to talk about it yesterday, I don't think. Did we? I don't know. There's a couple of things that Greg mentioned in passing that I was like, oh yeah, we really need to go over that. And I think I put some of those stories aside too, just to expand on his mention. Oh yes, right. It was him telling the story of Trump saying, so what, to being informed that they were out there saying, hang Mike Pence. We should look further into that. But first, weeks before the 2020 presidential election, okay, infamous political operative Roger Stone sat across from his associate Sal Greco at a restaurant in Florida, which should have been destroyed by drone strike. At the time, Greco was an NYPD cop, an actual cop, working security for Stone on the side. And that's a big side, because what's he doing having sitting in a restaurant in Florida if this is a side gig for a New York Police Department cop? All right, well, at any rate, their conversation at Cafe Europa in Fort Lauderdale, in case you're looking to program your Bayraktar drone, focused on two House Democrats for whom Stone harbors particular animosity. So that's a good excuse, right? Particular animosity. Jerry Nadler and Eric Swalwell. In audio of the conversation obtained exclusively by Mediaite, I guess that helps explain it a little bit, like there was audio of this. Who records the audio of this? And how do you, that's interesting. Well, let's see if we can find out. In audio of the conversation obtained exclusively by Mediaite, Stone made threatening comments about the two lawmakers, which is just what a pardoned guy ought to be doing with his time. It's time to do it, Stone told Greco. Let's go find Swalwell. It's time to do it. Then we'll see how brave the rest of them are. It's time to do it. It's either Nadler or Swalwell has to die before the election. That's not good tape. They need to get the message. Let's go find Swalwell and get this over with. I'm just not putting up with this, we'll say bleep anymore. Why I'm bleeping. Like, the far more offensive part is the threat to murder him, but you know how we are in this country. Okay, and also, who cares how we are in this country? This is a live stream and a podcast, and it's not controlled by the laws or rules and regulations of radio broadcast, but I don't know. It's somehow comforting to imagine this differently. A source familiar with the discussion told Mediaite they believed Stone's remarks were serious, which I guess is probably the source that recorded it. That's why they recorded it. But anyway, I wonder what they missed. What would make them, unless they were like, oh my God, that's Roger Stone. He's probably going to say something incriminating. I should tape him, which is a good bet and totally believable. You know, if you're pleading about this in the court, like, well, what made you think that there was a crime going on, if that's the excuse that's valid for recording a publicly held conversation like that, if you even need an excuse? I don't know. I'll have to think about that for a second. But that would be a pretty good one. Well, the speaker was Roger Stone. There was like 99% possibility he was going to do something illegal, so I just think we should record everything. Anyway, I mean, who else would be a source familiar with this tape? How do you even get this tape? Anyway, it was definitely concerning that he was constantly planning violence with an NYPD officer. That's another good reason to be upset about this. And other militia groups, the source said, which I don't know if they meant to make this implication, but the way that sentence comes out, the New York Police Department and other militia groups. Wow. But maybe. Anyway, both Nadler and Swalwell serve on the House Judiciary Committee. in case you were wondering why them. At the time of the Cafe Europa conversation, Nadler had announced that the committee would be investigating then-President Donald Trump's decision to commute Stone's sentence after he was convicted on federal crimes in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe. So he was convicted. Trump had announced that he would be commuting his sentence, and Nadler said, we're going to investigate that. So Stone said, let's kill Nadler. You know, I mean, that's not hard to understand in terms of why is this a-hole saying this horrific stuff? Well, one, because he's an a-hole, and two, because he thinks this is how you should react to things in this country. Because of his being a big patriot and all, of course. A jury found Roger Stone guilty, Nadler wrote on Twitter in July of 2020. By commuting his sentence, President Trump has infected our judicial system. Oh, yeah, right. He's just poisoning the blood of this country. Yeah, that's a good point. Infected our judicial system with partisanship and cronyism and attacked the rule of law. House Judiciary will conduct an aggressive investigation into this brazen corruption. And I know that the power of the pardon is supposed to be, or is said to be absolute. I don't know that it actually is absolute. I don't know if there's any, I don't know about the strength of any decisions on that question or if there ever have been any. But at best, it's a political power, and there's certainly no way to prevent the legislative branch from evaluating it and deciding, for instance, what if this was aimed at attempting a constitutional amendment limiting presidential pardon power? That would be a totally legitimate enterprise. So there's really no constitutional or legal way of preventing there from being an investigation of it inside the House of Representatives or inside Congress anywhere, even if there's next to no hope that anything would change. Just wanted to point that out. Anyway, doesn't matter to Roger Stone. It makes him mad, so murder. The source told Mediaite of Stone, Stone has been at war with Nadler and Swalwell for years. He just hates them. He just wanted to get Trump back into office so these things would stop, the source added. Stone was convicted of obstruction, witness tampering, and lying to Congress in the Mueller investigation. Prosecutors sought a 9-year prison sentence for the longtime Republican operative, but Trump's Justice Department reportedly intervened to impose a less severe sentence. Stone's sentence was eventually then commuted by Trump days before his reporting to prison, so he never went in. The intervention from the Justice Department prompted Aaron Zelinsky, the prosecutor and Mueller deputy who led the case against Stone, to recuse himself from the case in protest. Mediaite reported last week that Stone was caught on tape in December of 2020 urging Greco to punish Zelinsky, the guy who just said, I'm resigning. You can't even just resign and get out of trouble with Roger Stone because he's a fascist bastard. And he, too, deserves to, well, I don't know, fall down an open manhole and into a meat grinder or something. But we're just saying, I guess since it's okay to do this stuff now, since Roger Stone is walking free, I guess we all will, right? Because equal justice, yada, yada. Well, he wants to punish Zelinsky, and he says, in fact, he needs to be punished. Stone told Greco in the audio. Is that the same conversation? It's not entirely clear. You have to, how do you like this, by the way? Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, he's just talking in hyperbole. No, quote, you have to abduct him and punish him. That has to be done. It will be easy to abduct him because he is a weakling. How do you like that? That's a nice thing to say. Stone denied making those comments, claiming they were, I mean, this is on tape, right? Yes, but I claim, Roger Stone claims they were generated by AI. Sure, why not? He has previously claimed videos of his comments are actually deep fakes. In response to a request for comment on the remarks aimed at Swalwell and Nadler, Stone said, total nonsense. I've never said anything of the kind. More AI manipulation. You asked me to respond to audios that you don't let me hear and you don't identify a source for. Absurd. Well, I guess, like I said, they could put him through a meat grinder and then say, there never was Roger Stone. He was always AI. You can't charge me with a murder. What am I, guilty of killing Max Headroom? I mean, come on. You can say anything. Greco did not deny the comments, but said in a text to Mediaite, I don't think your reader is interested in ancient political fodder. We are, actually. if that's what that is. Greco, who acted as security for Stone and was with the operative during the January 6th riot at the Capitol soon after the 2020 election, was fired by the NYPD over his association with Stone and hanging out in Florida too often. An NYPD spokesperson confirmed to Mediaite that Greco was terminated in August of 2022. Nadler and Swalwell did not respond to requests for comment. So that's the background in which all of this nonsense is going on, and all of the swatting is happening, and now they're having a genteel and gentlemanly hearing about high points of constitutional law and pretending that it isn't Al Capone at the table. All right. Well, at any rate, we'll see how that shakes out. Other stories to cover today. There are many. And let's see. Let's scan through them and see which ones we haven't touched on yet. All right. Well, let's see. There's more Trump legal wrangling. This also from NBC News. A little too much on the NBC stuff today. They must be doing a great job in optimizing their search engine stuff and ending up at the top of my news searches or something over and over again. But this time, who's reporting here? Charlie Guile, Blaine Alexander, and Dara Gregorian. A big lineup of NBC personages today. Trump moves to dismiss Georgia election case on presidential immunity grounds. And again, this just really more of an example of his flooding the zone kind of thing. He's, like I said, we began the show saying he's in court today in the D.C. circuit arguing an appeal from Judge Chutkan's denial of his presidential immunity claims. He has made presidential immunity claims in the E. Jean Carroll case and been denied, but is appealing those as well. And now he is saying down in Georgia, which is in yet another circuit, that he's going to make the same claim. And he's, I guess what he's not abiding by is the doctrine of, if I have it right, collateral estoppel. You remember that Armando, who was on Friday, brought up the subject of estoppel. And there are various kinds. He was talking about judicial estoppel, but collateral estoppel, essentially the first concept of the rule of law that went out the window with Donald Trump, even before he was president, failing to acknowledge that a decision that's directly on point, even in a case that's about you, is applicable anywhere else or in any other circumstances. So he's just shopping for any district court in the country that will allow him to use this presidential immunity excuse. Next up, Georgia. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, quick update from what's going on in the courtroom at the Prettyman Courthouse in D.C., where the D.C. Circuit is sitting in review of Trump's one of 18,000 Trump appeals of the exact same concept, which doesn't exist, presidential immunity, where Joshua Friedman, by the way, I mean, Joshua Friedman is like ubiquitous on Blue Sky. Definitely somebody who benefited from the migration to Blue Sky. I mean, I assume he was Twitter famous as well. But freelance writer and editor, formerly of The Atlantic and Boston Review, apparently, and I guess his freedom from those jobs leaves him free to be a, like I said, ubiquitous presence on Blue Sky, and we're glad of it. But I guess he's following along on the audio, and one entry from just 3 or so minutes ago, one of the judges, I'm not sure which one, and I suppose if I flip back, we can find out who's speaking. But maybe not, or maybe he just doesn't know. It's just one of the judges who points out that one of the judges quotes back to Sauer, the Trump attorney here, the line from Trump's impeachment hearing in which his lawyer at the impeachment says that no former office holder is immune from prosecution. You remember the deal. This is exactly what Armando was talking about on Friday, judicial estoppel, right? You can't assert in one forum something that, gets you off the hook or doesn't get you off the hook. It doesn't really matter whether it gets you off the hook or not. But you can't make or what's the definition that we're offered for judicial estoppel? I think I offered that to you I offered it to Scott anyway for the roundup the other day. A common law doctrine that prevents a party from taking a position that is contrary to a position that party took in an earlier legal proceeding, which I guess is to be distinguished from pleadings in the alternative, which you can make contradictory claims about the same set of facts and say, well, I'm immune because XYZ clearly, but if that doesn't work, then I'm actually immune because of ABC. You can do that, and in the same proceeding anyway. But what you can't do, where a straightforward application of judicial estoppel, as Armando was explaining it to us on Friday, would be saying, look, you can't make the claim in the impeachment trial that the point of this claim at the time was you don't need to convict my client here in the impeachment trial in order to punish him. If you think this impeachment is improper for whatever reason, or that he's not guilty of this thing, which that would be ludicrous for you to come to that conclusion. But of course, there were people in the Republican Senate conference who believed that there was nothing wrong with the insurrection, even though they were running for their lives at the time. They would, a couple of days later, come to understand that what Donald Trump wanted from them as a Republican was to pretend that they didn't feel that way on the 6th and vote to acquit him. But the idea was, and of course they were also leaning on the excuse of, well, you can't impeach a guy who's out of office, which is actually not true, but they were still saying that at the time. And of course, they'll probably still claim that that's the case, even though we've all just lived through it and watched them impeach somebody who was no longer in office. They'll say, well, I voted to acquit not because I thought he wasn't guilty, but because I still believed at the time that you couldn't impeach a person who was out of office. What's interesting is, of course, they would probably have argued at the time, as Trump's counsel did, well, you can't impeach a person who's out of office because what you do with a person who's out of office is charge them criminally. And that was indeed part of the argument. But Trump's lawyers were basically saying, you certainly don't have to rely on impeachment as the tool for punishing someone, a former federal official, because you can charge them with crimes. Oh, we can? Okay, well then we'll acquit him here and allow the judicial system to charge him with crimes. Then, of course, Republicans began arguing, no, it's ridiculous. You can't charge him with a crime. I don't know whether they really believed in the idea of presidential immunity, but then Trump himself supplements that argument by saying, yeah, I'm totally immune. Well, that's not what you said in the impeachment trial. Is there a doctrine by which you can make that worth something? Yes, judicial estoppel is the answer, and that's what they're aiming at here, I guess. We'll see whether there's any more from the judge. Let's see. Is there further reporting on this one? Josh Friedman is the one following here. We might as well take a look down. This is all responses to his pointing this out, or the judge pointing this out. Let's see. We have, I don't know. Do I want to? Yeah, it's all just basically people saying, all right, good point. Yes. What about more from Josh Friedman? Should I just open his feed, I guess, and we'll take a quick look and see whether any of this is developing further. Judge quotes back to Sauer, the line from the impeachment, right? And then Judge Henderson, the one Republican appointee, is probing Sauer/Trump's interpretation of Marbury versus Madison. Oh, we were right in bringing that up earlier. Okay. Not today, but a couple of weeks ago. Let's see. The judge says, I think it's paradoxical to say that his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed allows him to violate criminal laws. That's a kind of a problem. A sign that even one Republican appointed judge on the panel is skeptical of Trump's position. The other two are Biden appointees. So I guess we know where that might go. But no further information at the moment. But we can't follow both. However, I guess I could have my intern, production assistant, research assistant following this stuff if I had thought to set that up ahead of time. All right. Oh, I should probably have, I'll make it. See here, production assistant. Where are you? Take a look at Josh Friedman's Twitter feed or Blue Sky feed, and then I can share that with everybody in the roundup. Okay, so what I was going to add to the record here was that in the middle of all of this, despite what looks to be another horrific beating in the D.C. circuit today, he's going to go back down to Georgia and assert the same stupid claim. Trump moves to dismiss Georgia election case on presidential immunity grounds. The former president also contended that charges against him should be tossed on due process and double jeopardy grounds. It's the same stupid claim that he's made and lost on in other courts, but he's like, this court hasn't told me I'm an idiot yet. I'll ask them. Let's see. Charlie Guile, who I think was on one of these previous stories, Blaine Alexander and Dara Gregorian. That does ring a bell. Were they not, I'm just going to check the bylines in this one. Was that the first one, the Tanya Chutkan group? No, it wasn't, huh? How interesting is that? Did I read it before and then not get started on the article? Maybe that's it. Former President Donald Trump is moving to have the election interference charges against him in Georgia thrown out, arguing he's protected by presidential immunity. Trump has made the same argument in the federal election interference case against him, which has been paused until an appeals court hears arguments on Trump's claim on Tuesday. The indictment is barred by presidential immunity. No, it isn't. And should be dismissed with prejudice. The Fulton County Superior Court filing on Monday said, arguing that the power to indict a current or former president for official acts does not exist, except we're claiming it, if you're claiming it in a impeachment trial, which seems really kind of weird. Prosecutors have argued that Trump was acting outside the scope of his duties, that's the actual key issue, when he pressured officials in the state to reject the 2020 election results in that state, which Joe Biden won. Trump also filed two other motions to dismiss the case on Monday, one arguing the charges violate his rights to due process. No real reason why that should be believed. How so? Where are we? We're in court, right? We're charging you with it, and you are appealing it, or you are moving that it be dismissed for lack of due process. How do you expect to have a hearing on your motion if you don't think that you're getting due process? Where at what point would you have been denied due process? And the answer is, I don't know. That's just a thing that I threw in there to enhance my claim that there's double jeopardy in trying me in an impeachment court in the United States Senate for a completely different set of charges and for a completely different facing a completely different set of penalties which are not criminal in nature versus charging me in the criminal courts in the United States and seeking to sacrifice my freedom and liberty in the offing here. Anyway, prosecutors have argued that he was acting outside the scope. We did that one right. Okay, let's get to the claims that he filed. The due process motion claims that Trump didn't have fair notice that he was doing anything illegal by pushing his stolen election claims. Nobody told me that was illegal. That's just not a thing, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Separately, his attorneys also argue that the case should be tossed because he was tried and acquitted on related charges before the U.S. Senate during his second impeachment, citing double jeopardy. That also is worthless and just not a thing. But wow, that's even more outrageous. The idea, well, nobody told me it was illegal, so I didn't have fair notice, so I didn't get due process. Which, by the way, not having fair notice that what you're doing is illegal, A, is not a defense, and B, that's not part of due process. Well, everybody should have a warning from an attorney that what you're doing is illegal, and if you don't, then they haven't had due process. No, that's not part of the process that you're due. You do a thing, when you get arrested, that's when due process starts. Prior to arrest, there's no due process of anything. I guess you could argue that a pre-arrest investigation could be questioned in its motivation. But, before you become involved in the criminal justice system, there's no way for you to lose your due process rights, or at least your criminal due process rights. There's civil due process rights in other settings, but nothing was happening. You can't just be like, well, somebody should have stopped me from committing the crime, and when they didn't, I lost my due process rights. That's not I don't know what to say, other than it's not a thing. Trump is, of course, facing felony racketeering and conspiracy charges for trying to subvert the 2020 election results in Georgia. He is, just as a reminder, among 19 defendants charged last August by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. The former president has pleaded not guilty, maintains the case as part of a political witch hunt against him. Then Trump attorney Steve Sato makes some sort of weird claims about how serious their ideas are, and they're not. The DA's office declines to comment. Willis, a Democrat, has denied that the case is politically motivated and said she charged Trump and the 18 co-defendants in this case because they broke Georgia law. Now, I guess in the in providing full accounting of things that are happening in the Georgia case, I guess we should try and search out some news here and here. I need my production assistant. One of the 19 co-defendants, and I believe it's Mike Roman, who once again is back in this case, and is definitely a defendant by name at this point, is the one who filed a weird complaint trying to disqualify Fani Willis from prosecuting the case. Let's see, yesterday I skimmed an ABC News article about it. I had heard nothing about it until late last night, and I saw some inference about it on social media, so I went to look up what was going on. But maybe we'll go to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on this one because it's the local source. Filing alleges improper relationship between the Fulton DA, that's Fani Willis, and a top Trump prosecutor. What's going on? Fani Willis hired alleged romantic partner as special prosecutor, court motion says. Not sure what that does to corrupt the case per se, but if it was true, it would be sort of an embarrassment, but a disqualification, I'm not certain why, but okay. Bill Rankin and Tamar Hallerman, reporting for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on this one. Fani Willis, it said, improperly hired an alleged romantic partner to prosecute Donald Trump. Well, not good, but also good. I don't know. But of course, if he's not competent to the task, then not so good. But then what's your complaint? But okay. Anyway, it was also claimed, and this is, I guess, the root of the issue, that she financially benefited from their relationship. How so? I don't know. This is Mike Roman. He's an idiot. He might be making it up just to get out of being charged. That could happen. That happens all the time. Well, this, according to a court motion filed on Monday, which argued that the criminal charges in the case were unconstitutional. The bombshell public filing alleged that Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, a private attorney, paid for lavish vacations that he took with Willis using the Fulton County funds that his law firm received. I mean, if he was hired, he can do whatever he wants with them. Whether or not it's proper for him to have a relationship with Fani Willis is a separate question. But, I don't know that there's anything wrong with being hired and then using your money to go on vacation. If they were making the county pay for the vacation, that would be something. But I guess if the money is turned over to you at some point in an arm's length deal, and that's where the problem lies, I guess. Is it arm's length? Then you can do whatever you want with it. Should you take Fani Willis with you? Probably not. Did he? I don't know. But anyway, we fill you in on the details of what's being alleged. At any rate, county records show that Wade, who has played a prominent role in the election interference case, has been paid nearly $654,000 in legal fees since January 2022. The DA authorizes his compensation. The motion, filed on behalf of defendant Michael Roman, a former Trump campaign official, seeks to have the charges against Roman dismissed, and for Willis, Wade, and the entire DA's office to be disqualified from further prosecution of the case. That may be a little ambitious, but let's see. Pallavi Bailey, a Willis spokeswoman, said the DA's office will respond to Roman's allegations through appropriate court filings. That's the way to do it, I guess. Wade did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The document offers no concrete proof of the romantic ties between Willis and Wade, but says, quote, sources close to both the special prosecutor and the district attorney have confirmed they had an ongoing personal relationship. Is that enough? Does it matter? I don't know. Is it true? I don't know. Roman's lawyer, Ashley Merchant, said she reviewed the case file in Wade's ongoing divorce proceedings at the Superior Court Clerk's office and made copies of certain documents, but the case file was later improperly sealed because no court hearing was held as required by law, the motion said. Because the case remains under seal, Merchant said she is not sharing the information she obtained from the divorce file until the seal is lifted. I guess she can't do much else. But it's also a convenient shield. She also said she's asking a judge to unseal the case file. It is unclear if the explosive issues raised in the filing undermine the validity of the indictment against Trump and the remaining 14 co-defendants, or simply muddy the waters by questioning Willis's professional ethics. Neither of which would be particularly good. But by the way, they're swatting judges and prosecutors on the other side. But both sides, one of them might have possibly gone on vacation. So anyway, one ethics expert said that the allegations, if true, raised serious questions. Stephen Gillers, a professor emeritus at the New York University Law School who's written extensively about legal and judicial ethics, said a closer look at Willis's decision-making is needed before it can be determined whether the indictment should be dismissed. I mean, it shouldn't even rise to that level, but, I guess you got to wonder. If the allegations are true, Gillers said, Willis was conflicted in the investigation and prosecution of this case and wasn't able to bring the sort of independent professional judgment her position requires. That does not mean that her decisions were in fact improperly motivated, Gillers said in an email. It does mean that the public and the state, as her client, could not have the confidence in independent legal judgment that her position required her to exercise. But although not judgment about the prosecution of the case per se, but certainly who she hired to do it, maybe. The filing alleges that Willis and Wade have been involved in a romantic relationship that began before Wade was appointed special prosecutor. It says they traveled together to Napa Valley and Florida, and they cruised the Caribbean together using tickets Wade purchased from Norwegian and Caribbean cruise lines. Why that matters, I don't know. Although the filing did not include documentation of those purchases. The motion said the checks sent to Wade from Fulton County and his subsequent purchase of vacations for Willis could amount to honest services fraud, a federal crime in which a vendor gives kickbacks to an employer. All right. It is also possible that this could be prosecuted under the federal racketeering statute, which would be really something, the motion said. Merchant wrote that the motion is not filed lightly, sure, nor is it being filed without considerable forethought, research, or investigation. So what? But the issue had to be raised and must be heard because the issue strikes at the heart of the fairness in our judicial system and, if left unaddressed and unchecked, threatened to taint the entire prosecution of this case, invite error, and completely undermine public confidence in any outcome in this proceeding. I don't know about that, but that's what you'd claim. Willis and Wade, the motion contends, have been engaged in an improper, clandestine personal relationship during the pendency of this case, which has resulted in the special prosecutor and in turn the district attorney profiting significantly from this prosecution at the expense of the taxpayers. The problem with Wade's appointment is that it was not approved by the Fulton County Board of Commissioners as required by law. Oh, well, the motion said. The motion also questioned Wade's credentials, contending he has never prosecuted a felony case. Wade was a prosecutor in Cobb County, but was not immediately clear what cases he handled there. Wade entered into his special prosecutor contract on November 1st, 2021, just one day before he filed for divorce in Cobb County, the motion said. Willis is divorced. Roman's filing also resurfaces an accusation previously made against Wade that his 2 oaths of office were not filed in court prior to his work on the case, so he misrepresented himself as a duly authorized special prosecutor. Judge Scott McAfee previously rejected that argument, But it's back anyway, so who cares? Stating that the requirements don't apply to contractors working on single cases and that the defendants didn't establish a constitutional violation or structural defect to the grand jury process that warranted dismissing the case outright. If this parrot of a motion is somehow not yet dead, the defendant has failed to establish how Wade's actions resulted in prejudice, McAfee wrote, alluding to a famous Monty Python sketch. And we know which one. Merchant acknowledged McAfee's ruling, but who cares? But said, that in the larger context of the various issues surrounding his appointment, Willis's lack of authority to appoint him and the conflict of interest issues addressed below, the fact that Wade did not file his oath before beginning work takes on new and more significant meaning and indeed constitutes a structural defect in the indictment. Maybe. Merchant's filing came on the day McAfee had set as a deadline for most of the defendants to submit pretrial motions in the sprawling criminal case. So what do you know? Just under the wire. Roman worked as a director of Election Day operations for the Trump campaign in 2020. He was charged with 7 felony counts in Fulton, most of them conspiracy charges in conjunction with his role helping organize slates of Trump electors in battleground states won by Democrat Joe Biden, including Georgia. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges, and his legal team previously turned down a plea offer from the DA's office. Notably, Roman was the only one of the 19 people Willis charged who had not been recommended for indictment by a special grand jury, which spent 8 months investigating election subversion efforts in Georgia after the 2020 election. A separate grand jury handed up criminal charges, I guess, for him. So that's of some interest as well. Now you know that that's out there pending. It may just be garbage to muddy the waters. It may be more than that, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. And more to my point is just the general idea. This story doesn't really bear on that, but the general idea that, well, you know, it is ironic for Trump co-conspirators to be all about technicalities and making sure the law is followed to the letter when, of course, they're charged with, you know, some very blatant criminal misconduct, for one thing. And the idea that collateral estoppel, the other kind of estoppel that has occasionally been mentioned on the show. And do you want, I did put that, I think, at some point or submit it for consideration in one of the roundups. But collateral estoppel, just in case you were interested, is known in modern terminology as issue preclusion. That'll give you a better understanding, perhaps, of what is it. Also a common law estoppel doctrine that prevents a person from relitigating an issue. One summary is that once a court has decided an issue of fact or law necessary to its judgment, that decision precludes relitigation of the issue in a suit on a different cause of action involving a party to the first case. The rationale behind issue preclusion is the prevention of legal harassment and the prevention of overuse or abuse of judicial resources, which is pretty clearly what's happening here with his just essentially throwing the same ketchup, I guess, at the walls over and over again. Different walls, maybe. Different bottles of ketchup, maybe. But if the question is what happens when you throw ketchup at a wall, we've settled that issue, and we don't really need to be relitigating it here or in any other forum. All right, let's see. Other stories to add to the mix, and as we approach our third break, anything else we can or should squeeze in? All right, well, how about this update from the HuffPost on the nonsense, one of several issue areas of nonsense happening in Florida. Florida Republican Party boots chairman amid rape investigation. In case you were waiting for that headline, Christian Ziegler is accused, of course, of raping a woman with whom he and his wife, an outspoken anti-LGBTQ plus advocate, had a prior consensual sexual relationship. And, of course, one of the founders of Moms for Liberty, who are burning books that might mention any of the activities in which she freely engages in her spare time. But in a special meeting on Monday, the Florida Republican Party removed its chairman amid a police investigation into allegations he raped a woman, again, with whom he and his wife had previously engaged in consensual sex. This, by the way, reported by Ryan Grenoble. Do I have that? Does it rhyme with Chernobyl, or is it pronounced some other way? Over at HuffPost. Christian Ziegler had resisted calls for his resignation from other top Republicans in the state, forcing the emergency closed-door vote that led to his ouster. You had to figure that was coming, right? In a subsequent vote, the committee elected Vice Chairman Evan Power to fill Ziegler's seat. I guess we'll later find out about what kind of pervert Evan Power is. But I'm just talking about statistics here. I'm not saying I know anything about the guy. The political infighting has sparked alarm among Florida Republicans who acknowledge the state plays a pivotal role in the party's national ambitions. We have to move past this and have to focus on 2024, said State Senator Joe Gruters, who preceded Ziegler as party chair. And in speaking to the AP, Florida is one of the most important states for the Republicans, and we have to continue to bring home victories, or cheat, I guess, especially for Rick Scott and the top of the ticket with Trump as our nominee eventually. He knows that's coming. Ziegler's wife, Bridget Ziegler, also refused to step down from her position on the Sarasota School Board, despite a 4-1 vote last month in favor of her resignation. And I don't know if you can just favor her resignation and actually get it. You got to boot her. In addition to her role on the board, Bridget co-founded Moms for Liberty, and you know what jerks they are and can be going forward into the future. All right, we'll take our last break, and then, hey, we'll see what happens for the rest of the show. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, look at this. We got our call coming in from Joan, so you all get to hear the ringy-dingy noises, and that's always fun to do. Good morning, Joan. Hi, how you doing?
Good morning. Skype was fighting with me this morning. I apologize.
That's all right. Skype does that from time to time. Not sure why, but it does happen. So how's it going this morning? Are you listening to the court hearings at all, or is someone assigned to that?
Mark Sumner is listening to the court hearings and reporting on that shortly.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like an interesting and fun morning, I suppose. But yeah, we should probably have pretty quick turnaround.
But
okay. Yes. I mean, it's not likely to come out well for Trump, and we'll find out soon enough that the second or the DC circuit, like every other circuit, thinks there's no such thing as absolute presidential immunity. But it is kind of annoying. I mean, it will get on your nerves that it doesn't matter how many times you tell him that. He's just going to keep saying there is, and just do it. And if he can't do it in different courts, he can do it in different jurisdictions over and over again. So I see
over and over again.
Yeah, I was just reading that. Again, they're in the appeals stage in D.C. They've already done the appeals stage in New York with respect to the E. Jean Carroll case.
Right.
He'll be appealing anyway, probably from New York, and trying to get the Supreme Court to take note. They have no real interest, I don't think, in intervening in the E. Jean Carroll part of the case. They probably rather, if they have to do any ruling at all, will take this one. But in the meantime, I find out he's also now filed in Georgia and said, well, I have presidential immunity from that. Oh, but it's the same crime. You're just being charged in Georgia with it. But, well, I have immunity from that one too. But anyway, and also the long anticipated, question has come up from the judges today. That one I've seen already. Aren't you the guy who, when you were impeached, said, don't worry about it. You don't have to convict me here because you can always charge me criminally?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
well,
isn't that where all of the Republican senators, well, not all, but, most famously Mitch McConnell said that the appropriate place for this essentially is in criminal court?
Right.
Wasn't that basically the gist of what McConnell said?
Yeah. At a minimum, you should come away with, okay, let's say Trump is right. There is absolute presidential immunity. You should at a minimum say, wow, Mitch McConnell is somebody who doesn't know what he's doing and should be thrown out of office. But, never follows that way. But instead, of course, down in Kentucky, the Republicans say, wow, that was complete BS. And yet Mitch McConnell made it work. So let's send Mitch McConnell back. Anyway. What are you
thank
watching?
you once again, Chris Coons, for your Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had a hell of a piss, Arnold. I think it's the basic question, the basic quote that I pull from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I hope you had a hell of a Valentine's dinner, Chris. Terrific. It was really paid off for all of us. What did I eat on that fabulous menu, by the way? What did I get out of that one? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So, if you're not court watching today, is it government shutdown watching?
Of course it's government shutdown watch.
I can't believe it. And it's a big story because, of course, yesterday the big story was there's not going to be a government shutdown, which I think I knew then. Oh, I guess on Tuesday we'll be talking about how there's probably going to be a government shutdown because a Republican said there wasn't going to be one.
Right.
So what happened? They
one
reached a
set
deal
of
of some kind.
Said,
but
we've
so
got
what?
the deal. The other set of Republicans said, oh, yeah?
Right. We don't have one.
And now they are even talking about Mike Johnson's future as Speaker, because of course they are.
Well, why not? I mean, of course everyone... I think everyone remembers. If you don't, well, congratulations for putting this out of mind.
You don't have to carry that around with you.
Yeah.
In your memory.
Right.
That's freedom.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, just keep forgetting. But he's only in office as Speaker because they, got rid of Kevin McCarthy for reaching a deal, and then everybody protested that there shouldn't be one. And then like 6 people in between Kevin McCarthy and Johnson were rejected on, sometimes on those grounds, but just generally for incompetence, and couldn't put the votes together. Now we have Johnson, and I don't know whether Republicans, rank and file Republicans, really thought we've finally found a guy who'll handle budget and appropriations issues the way we want, or they were just, well, the next 6 months we are not going to have to deal with this thing, but then we're going to have a showdown and then we'll boot this guy too. But
not even 6 months.
Yeah, I guess that's
I
right.
Don't know, were they thinking, here's a complete newbie who we can control?
Yeah, I don't know.
Was it? I don't know if it was that as much as we look really, really, really bad here and we've got to settle on somebody.
Yeah, we got to get out of this.
How this guy says he wants to do it, let's let him do it.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He didn't make much of an impression, but it wasn't, to me, the impression, easily manipulated. I sort of thought, well, if you can argue that it's in the Bible, he could be easily manipulated, but unless you can say that God said there should be a shutdown, and they may believe that, but
well,
you have to sneak it into the
lack
Bible.
Of experience in any kind of leadership position.
I guess that's possible. I mean, that's the only way they figured, well, he'll want to stay because he just got here. He just painted the place.
And in fact, they're now using that as their excuse to consider getting rid of him. Punchbowl reports this morning that a key Republican told them, quote, significant concerns growing about Mike's ability to jump to this level and deliver conservative wins.
All right.
Growing feeling that he's in way over his head.
Okay.
As much as there was valid criticism and frustration with Kevin, Mike is struggling to grow into the job and is just getting rolled even more than McCarthy did.
Oh. Okay. Well, yeah, maybe you can Skype chat me that link there if you've got that handy, and we'll let people read that. But yeah, okay, that makes the case pretty convincingly that they. I mean, it shouldn't surprise anybody that they didn't necessarily think this all the way through when they made this selection. Except now it's at least arguable that they knew going into it. Yeah. He's not going to be any better, and if need be, we'll get rid of him. But the point is, we need to escape from this embarrassment immediately. So they did it. And
I think so. Okay. I think so in large part. And, he did sort of lead the 2020 election denial effort in the House, so they probably thought they had a true believer, and,
Yeah. I guess so, and I guess, right, well, that seemed really smart, the way he did that, so, I don't know, a smart guy. Maybe he'll get through the budget process, maybe not.
Really, I think he was just the only one that they could all agree on, because they really didn't know that much about it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's not great news in terms of their interest in making it look like they can govern.
Right.
They don't want to govern. They just want people to think that they do.
And now Johnson's in the same position that McCarthy was.
Yeah.
Do you want to succeed as Speaker? You have to be able to show you can govern. The least lowest, I guess I should say, hurdle to that is keeping government functioning by funding it.
Yeah. Like if you hit the off switch, I guess you lose.
That's it. And now Johnson, I can't feel sorry for him, but if I was able to come up with empathy for Mike Johnson, it would be over the fact that he now has just, 220 votes?
Oh, yeah.
And it will be, by the end of the month, it'll be 219 when Bill Johnson, is that his name from?
I don't know.
Somewhere in the Midwest, goes off to be university president.
Yeah, which is a great job, by the way. They should kick him out of that one real quick. That'd be funny. They should just... I think the idea of becoming a university president was stolen from someone else. That's plagiarism. You're out. Only one president around here. Okay, well...
Oh, boy.
So...
Anyway...
Yeah.
Back to the House.
Okay.
219 votes.
Yeah, that's...
To fund the government.
As thin as it gets. Well,
probably not. It'll be 218 because Steve Scalise is out getting stem cell treatments.
Oh. Isn't that bad?
At least 2 weeks. And if it's stem cell, he's not going to be out for just 2 weeks. I mean...
Is that an extensive procedure?
It requires a prolonged period of isolation because you don't have any immunity.
Well, but what was there to be immune from? I mean, it's all just a hoax. Every disease is a hoax, including whatever one he's got. All right. Well.
So.
Ooh. And also, by the way, something abortion. But
yeah.
Don't mind me because I don't believe that that's true. So, I can't make that claim, but everybody who made him an important guy can. Okay, so they may have 218, which is actually the bare minimum number you can have and muster a majority if everybody else is there and voting.
Right, and on board.
Yeah,
and they're not on board.
Oh,
so,
well,
once again, the only way Mike Johnson can do this, just as it was true with Kevin McCarthy, the only way he can do his job, the one that they elected him to do, is by working with Democrats.
Oh, no. Well,
oh, no.
For Mike, I would say, consider that this is a sign from God. I mean, if that's the sort of thing that convinces you, like I had 222 and now it's down and down, down, down. And okay, well, at least I have 219. Oh my gosh, somebody's going to be gone for 2 weeks. And it's cold and flu season. And my caucus doesn't believe in mitigation. So I guess we'll probably lose a couple more, at least temporarily.
Yeah, it's not just cold and flu season. It is COVID season.
Yes, right.
With a vengeance.
And RSV and whatever else you got, real wrath of God stuff, you might say.
If you believe that kind
right.
of thing.
And he might not. I mean, he says he does, but then occasionally, I guess you got to entertain the possibility. Oh, he's full of it. So anyway, we'll see. I guess it's a good test for him, but they may not be able to do anything at all, except I guess get some portion of the Republican Party that thinks it's best. I understand why everybody is up in arms about this, but it's best if we just escape with our lives, let the government function, stand for re-election, and let the Freedom Caucus fume.
Right. And try to keep a House majority.
Yeah. I mean,
which we cannot do if we shut down the government, because there's no way in this situation anybody is blaming anybody but us.
Yeah, I guess we could try and go and lie to everybody, but if anybody finds out the truth or has been paying attention or just wants a functioning government and finds that there isn't one, we'll be in trouble. So
it'll be interesting to see what the Santos seat special brings to the House. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Democrat. And it'll be interesting to see how that changes, if it does, the thinking of those remaining 17 Biden district Republicans.
Yeah. They'll have to worry, although they may think, well, there was pretty unique circumstances. Santos is a pretty
they were very
thing,
unique circumstances, but still, every single one of them voted to advance the impeachment inquiry against President Biden.
Yes. That won't be well received. And there's a 20 to 30% chance that they were all drag performers at some point as well. But, I just throwing that out, just statistically speaking, we hit the jackpot on that one with Santos, among other things that he did that were odd. But, it could happen. But they have a lot of fronts to watch. And yes, being in a Biden district, and hey, I impeached the guy that you wanted to win the arguably most important election in modern American history. Is that a problem? Yes, it is. We reject
it. Yes, it is. And you shut down government?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I thought, okay, at least you'll run government poorly, but you'll run it, right? Nope. Oh. Well, then there's no point in you. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I hope that happens. And then, once Mike Johnson has less than 218, then we don't have to worry about him. And it's good for Republicans. We don't have to worry about who's going to be speaker because we don't control that anymore. This is a lot easier. Yeah.
It would be a lot easier. And, there is not a slim chance that we end this year with Hakeem Jeffries as speaker.
I guess, right? Like at some point, if just enough of these guys are gone for whatever reason, and there's more Democrats seated than Republicans, it's that slim.
The crazies vote to oust Johnson.
Yeah.
They're easily considering. Certainly Chip Roy is considering it, and it only takes one to bring up the vote. So.
Well, yeah, that was their idea. So, I guess, by the way, if Republicans were to lose control of the House, I mean, I assume, is Johnson just, I don't know, what do you do with him? Normally, the speaker says, well, okay, I'll be minority leader. And there's a big problem. Somebody has to give up a elected leadership job somewhere, or they'll create some dumb title to move them into. But Johnson's not been in leadership anywhere else. They might just be like, well, you would have to learn the minority leader job on the fly. But
right.
We already have a majority leader who is Scalise, who would want to become, would be forced to become minority leader.
But they also rejected Scalise as speaker, so...
Yeah. It'll be an interesting problem of what to do with people. And I assume them now being used to chaos in their conference, it wouldn't bother them a great deal. Normally, I'd say, I don't know, if it was Democrats, they'd settle it in some way that top Democrat would remain the top Democrat. Everybody would shift over one position and they'd make up something for somebody else. But with Republicans, they could be like, kill them all. Wow. Yeah, you guys are crazy.
I don't know if it would necessarily be kill them all, but
I don't know.
It could happen.
Well, Roger Stone could say kill them all. How about that?
Yes.
It's certainly a possibility. And then, all right, you're right. I'm being too harsh. SWAT them all. That would be the answer.
Yes.
Yeah, that will do. And if some of them get killed in the swatting, well, that's just bad policing. And we'll take it out of the D.C. government budget. So, okay. Anyway.
By the way, this is all Kevin McCarthy's fault.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if he had done the job correctly, not that there was any real way of doing it.
Totally given the farm away.
Yeah.
To the Freedom Caucus. If he hadn't set it up so that they could control the Rules Committee, so that they could oust him with one vote or with one person on a motion to vacate.
Yeah.
He said, here, you have my head on a platter. Do with it what you will. They did. Yeah. And that's a situation that any Republican was going to walk into, trying to lead the party.
Yes. And now someone else has walked in.
Because Kevin McCarthy absolutely refused to recognize the reality of his tiny majority and his crazy, crazy, crazy caucus.
Yeah.
And say, okay, Hakeem, let's see what we can do here.
Well, I don't know what else he was going to do.
I'm happy to blame everything on Kevin McCarthy.
Sure. And, and you can do it.
Out of Congress, I don't care. It's
he doesn't even have a spokesperson to answer you with at this point. Although I assume he has somebody working for him. But yeah, I forgot entirely. And I mentioned yesterday. Oh yeah, he's gone. That's right. He left Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, he should. It makes sense.
He was kind of humiliated.
Yeah. And I'm sure
it would be embarrassing to stick around after that.
Yeah, and it frequently is. And people who are deposed from the top job very rarely stick around very long, although he may have had some enjoyment in saying, oh, yeah, well, watch this. Now you have 219, you jackass. Good luck. Not that was going to be...
I think there was probably no small amount of satisfaction there.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if he, drinks wine, but he and Boehner should start hanging out. I think that would be fun.
I don't think Boehner probably particularly wants to spend much time around him.
No,
I could be wrong.
I mean, it could be that he's reformed
but my
now.
guess is that he's not Boehner's kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some animosity there, obviously, but sometimes being thrown out on your ass reforms the other guy, and then Boehner say, welcome back to Earth. Now you're cool. But
I wonder who's in Nancy Pelosi's old office, the Hideaway.
Oh. I don't know who's... I mean, Johnson stripped that away, right? Is that the one you're talking about? The
McHenry stripped it away.
Yes. Okay, that's right. Yeah, I guess you're right. It was McHenry, now that I recall. And he, too, kind of unceremoniously dumped as well. Is he retiring?
Yes, he is.
Okay. That's right. I thought I remembered that. They should all go. I mean, at this point, but... All right, so crazy times ahead. I assume, are we assuming that the very first shutdown deadline, the one that comes up in January 19th, is going to be triggered, or attempting to trigger one or both? Does the second one even matter if you've done the first one?
Yeah, that's the whole reason why people were saying this is a crazy idea, having two shutdown deadlines.
Yeah,
we don't know for sure. Probably. I mean, Johnson right now, while he said 3 months ago or whatever it was when he came in, there's no way I'm going to do right after the last continuing resolution, there's no way we're going to do another short-term continuing resolution, is now softening his rhetoric on that, saying, well, we're this close. So it's not a guarantee that there will be a shutdown. But it's also not a guarantee that Mike Johnson will go to Hakeem Jeffries and say, I really, really, really need your help. Please, let's do this.
Yeah. Well, all we can do is watch and wait and see, and I guess there's just no thing too ridiculous to consider at this point. But
no, we've seen it all. Meanwhile, there is probably not going to be any aid for Ukraine anytime soon.
All right.
Even if the Senate can come up with their border deal. And I don't know if this could have been avoided, but I really, really wish we could rewind and the Biden administration not put border security funding in to the supplemental request for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. I don't know that Republicans would not have said, oh, yeah, you want this? Well, we have to do immigration. But it left the door ajar by including it in the request in the first place. So
yes,
here we are.
Not a great moment, but...
and I don't see them being separated now. I am very, very pessimistic about there being any funding for Ukraine.
Yeah, all right. I guess that's now a distinct possibility, and I guess it's another one. Every time they approach a decision-making structure, a blueprint, which assumes that this won't happen because remember, people on all sides want to avoid having this happen. There are a few stray crazies who are against it, but everybody wants to avoid this. It's like, I keep thinking like super committee stuff. Every time you say everybody wants to avoid it, it means we're going to crash right into it. Why?
Right.
How is this happening over and over? We really can't decide what we don't want. We can't decide what we do want. We can't even decide what we don't. We say we don't want it, but why do we keep it? Well,
here we go again. Yep.
Yeah. So it's very reminiscent of like 5 or 6 previous rounds of, well, this definitely won't happen because, but it is, I mean, I guess another House Freedom Caucus win, I guess, which does most of the Freedom Caucus,
also a Senate.
Are they for that? Is the Freedom Caucus mostly anti-Ukraine aid? I'm not certain that they all are, but
yes, almost entirely.
That's amazing
for
a Freedom
Caucus.
Caucus.
There are about 100 still Republicans, House Republicans, who are supportive of Ukraine aid.
Okay.
Based on the last vote that they did on it. That was adding it back into the defense authorization bill, which is sort of funding Ukraine. I mean, there's $300 million in there, I think, for it, that was stripped out in committee, I believe, but then added back in as an amendment. And that's where the authorization versus appropriations is confusing to me.
Oh, yeah.
It's sort of muddy there in the Defense Authorization Act. Where is actual money being spent versus money being allocated? But that was money being spent. So I guess it was some sort of, you can take it out of this pot and put it into this one. Okay. Anyway, yes.
Rough to follow.
Back when they had that vote, there were more than 100 Republicans supporting us. So there is a significant chunk of both House and Senate Republicans who want to do this. But there's a louder chunk who don't. And they got to Mitch McConnell, who I don't know if it's because of his health issues, because he feels he has weakening leadership over in that conference. He gave in to them. I don't know what. But, we went from Mitch McConnell being the number one cheerleader for Ukraine to Mitch McConnell saying we have to have border stuff before we can agree to Ukraine aid.
And then, of course, even if you get the border stuff, they'll just simply say, well, we want more in exchange for actually holding up our end of the bargain, because it was never a bargain. We were just kidding. Which is amazing, and amazing to the House Freedom Caucus that now, hardcore right-wing Republican concepts of freedom include, let Russia take half of Europe.
Pretty much.
I can't believe we're there, but I guess it's no crazier than the rest of the things that Republicans have involved us in, including, their former president relitigating this thing and pressing immunity claims that don't exist in 17 different courts all at once.
Well, their former president, trying to basically overthrow government.
Yes. Well, that too is another thing that I didn't think the freedom people would be about.
Watch his vice president be killed.
Yeah.
So what?
Right.
He says.
That was something. Yeah, Greg mentioned that one yesterday. I haven't read that article and discussed it yet, but I guess we all believe that that's what he was saying, but it's interesting that this stuff still comes out, so far down the road. Yeah. And did I read correctly that was from whose testimony was that? It was
I'm not sure if it was Scavino.
Yes.
Who said, I think it was.
That's right. I was like, it's one of the close names.
Which was not voluntary.
Yeah, he wouldn't give it to the committee, but I guess he recognized the authority of the Article 3 courts.
Yes.
Which, okay, good. I guess I'm glad you did. It's just so interesting that he didn't try to defy that too in some way, but I guess then he'd go to jail, so I guess not.
Well, and what was also critical in these revelations was the one exculpatory thing that Trump could point to, the "be peaceful" tweet.
Yes.
Was not written by Trump.
Right. That's Scavino's job, right? Was to do most of his tweeting for him.
Yes.
But yet the one thing that Trump did send was the one, I think he was one that egged on the crowd against Pence.
Against Pence.
And then they were like, why did you send this, Scavino?
Pence
didn't.
Had to take cover. He said, so what?
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. And equally amazing is, as reading all this testimony against Trump. Remember, Scavino still works for Trump, doesn't he? He's on the campaign. He's like, yeah, we should put this guy back in here. But you were front row center to maybe the darkest moment of the insurrection. Yeah. Right. But he wasn't trying to kill me. But weren't you just saying in your testimony this shows that he would sacrifice anybody? Yes. And aren't you anybody? We're out of time. We'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody. Because we are. It's time to go. Thank you, though, for coming by and
what a closer.
Yeah, wasn't that a good one? It's like I planned that one. But I never have any plans, except to say I hope that you plan to come back next Tuesday. And let's see, we'll be at almost shutdown time at that point,
almost
right?
Shutdown, 10 days.
Okay, so we'll be able to count down and do a little advent calendar kind of a thing and see where we stand. Okay, thanks, Joan. Take care.
Radio.com.
We hand things over to Justice now.
Listening to Kagro in the morning.
Yes, you were, but now then you were listening to Joan. And now you're going to be listening to Justice Putnam with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. What's he got on tap for you today? Let's see. Trump says he hopes the market crashes right away and people lose their homes, 401ks, and jobs so that he can blame it on Joe. He's on your side, everybody. He's pulling for you, the common man. Don't you understand? Stay tuned.